All right. Hello, citizens of the Nigerverse. It is Nige here once again. About 5 years ago, we were bestowed with a interesting video game, to say the least. A video game I played when it first came out. But how does it hold up 5 years later in retrospect? Well, I can't fully answer that because it's been a while since I've touched the game. But let's talk about Marvel's Avengers. Now, admittedly, I'm a little bit off from the 5 year mark. I think I'm only off by like a few weeks. Um, it came out on September 4th of 2020, so not long before my 20th birthday and while we were still very much in the pandemic. But Avengers is a interesting story. Also kind of a cautionary tale in a way, but it's not a tale that's been told for the first time. And it's just another example of live service games that eventually got shut down, taken to the woodshed, as oftentimes a lot of these games usually do. But this one was interesting because this game had a lot of potential, and sadly, it didn't fully live up to its potential. Now, was the game necessarily bad? I don't know if I'd go that far, but there was a lot of stuff that was questionable when it came to this game. And when I want to kind of take a look back on this game and kind of give my thoughts in retrospect about 5 years later, especially because I'm sure there are a number of people who have forgotten or maybe never even knew that this game had come out in the first place. Probably didn't know this game's existence. But what happens when a game that should be a good idea on paper, that seems to have all the tools to be a good game, ends up not really living up to that? Let's discuss it. But first, on a somewhat related note, kind of a little anecdote when it comes to this game. Fun fact about myself: I, in my entire life, have only ever pre-ordered 4 games. Now, that's not uh, me saying that pre-ordering games is bad. In fact, I'm definitely thinking about pre-ordering the Wolverine game and possibly even Marvel Tokon because those definitely I'm excited for. But in my life, I've only ever pre-ordered 4 games. This was game number 3. So the first game I ever pre-ordered back in the day was the Spyro Reignite trilogy. That's when I first, around when I first got my PS4. Spyro Reignite trilogy. I was super hyped for it. It came out, was delayed to November. It came out in November, and I had the game pre-ordered and all that good stuff. But then the next year, I pre-ordered Mortal Kombat 11, and don't ask me why, but I did. I think it was mainly because um, A, it was a new Mortal Kombat game. B, I had my PS4 now, so I could play Mortal Kombat 11. And C, I wanted Shao Kahn. So I pre ordered Mortal Kombat 11. And this was the third game I pre ordered. Because this game did interest me. It looked interesting to say the least. He's of course very much cashing in on the appeal. Oh, and the um hype, I would say, of the MCU at the time. Granted, Endgame was the year before. This came out in 2020, as you could probably piece together by the name of this video here. This game came out more specifically on September 4th of 2020. So Oh, by that time, the MCU was still relatively hot. It wasn't as hot as it was. Like, if this would have came out the year before, I think it would have been even hotter because that's around when Endgame was. But the MCU was still relatively hot. So having this game come out around that time is not necessarily a bad thing. But This game looked interesting, and I d- admittedly, I don't quite. Maybe that was what compelled me to pre-order it. Not sure why I pre-ordered it though, but I ended up doing so. But I did. But I say that to say, I was very excited for this game. I was very interested in this game. I remember the trailers kind of leading up to the game and showing off the game and everything. I remember not being super big on some of the character designs, more specifically Captain America, but eventually it kind of warmed up to me over time. Uh, but I remember being very excited for this game, and eventually the day came, and I was able to play this game. I finally got around to playing this game. In fact, I think I talked about it back during the early days of like System Shock Radio and me like making content and everything uh, uh about this game. And I remember not hating it. Here's the thing. Um, the game was okay. It was just okay. I didn't hate it. It wasn't the worst game I ever played, but I did find myself not loving some of the mechanics of the game. It very much was I forget what the exact term was, as a looter shooter, I think. And, and, it, it definitely fell into that realm, and it had stuff like loot boxes and the skins you can get and stuff like that from there. So it was very emblematic of its time. But I remember the gameplay being not super bad. In terms of how the characters played, I think they played fine for the most part. Like in terms of what I would expect from a Marvel game, uh, it could have been worse, but I remember not being super thrilled when I went to play it. For starters, the story mode, which I mainly ended up playing, I don't think I played online at all for this game. The story mode, I remember being pretty interesting, but pretty short. So the story for this game is that the Avengers have split up. They were a team in universe. There's uh, there's huge uh, a huge incident happened, and on A Day, which was supposed to be like an Avengers celebration, and the Avengers got blamed for it. And they released the Terrian Mists, which 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 affected Kamala Khan, who got her powers and became Miss Marvel. So that's how she becomes Miss Marvel in this universe. But she essentially, somewhat unintentionally, he is kind of the thing that ultimately brings the Avengers back together, especially with AIM hunting her and everything. So, one by one, she rounds the group back together, starting with the Hulk, then Iron Man and Black Widow, who had been sending messages to Kamala the entire time. And to help her take down AIM. Thor then showed up, and then finally Captain America, who was believed to be dead, was found alive in space. In the AIM space station. And the Avengers reassembled, and they ended up battling AIM, and more specifically George Tarleton, who turned into Modoc. So the Avengers are eventually got the band back together and became a team once again. And like I said, the story was kind of cool. It was pretty interesting. It had its kind of moments. You could tell the MCU influence was definitely there, um, but I think that was one of the problems was that it was very short. It didn't take me long to beat the game, or at least the game's story mode. That and there was one part, and I remember ranting about it when I did my video. It was kind of a mini rant. There was one cutscene, more specifically the cutscene showing what happened to Captain America. They believe that Tarleton, aka slash like AIM, killed Captain America, but then is the cutscene where it's revealed Captain America sacrificed himself to save Tarleton, and he smashed the reactor, and that's what kind of led to the Terrigen Mist being released, which is kind of what got us here in the first place. Uh, I remember that scene, the audio being dropped for that scene, which really sucked. And sadly, a lot of especially a lot of modern games do have glitches and everything, and I believe it was eventually patched out. But it did suck that there was a whole section of the game with audio missing. But other than that, the story was pretty cool. Well, like I said, very short though. And I remember her afterwards, kind of not really knowing what to do with the game. I would come back to it every now and then. It wasn't a game I stuck with, but I remember coming back to it every now and then, especially when the DLC dropped. I'll be completely honest. I didn't make it past the Hawkeye DLC. The Clint Barton Hawkeye DLC. I did not play another DLC after that, kind of because I got kind of bored with the game, and but also B, because every time I booted the game up, my PlayStation sounded like a jet engine, and I didn't want it to break my PlayStation. Granted, I had the PS4 Pro, and I imagine it probably could have sustained it. I mean, after all, it's on the console in the first place. Although that hasn't stopped game companies before, so I don't know. But I remember every time I would play it, my PS4 would be super duper loud. That's the main thing I remembered. But yeah, eventually I dropped the game and never really went back. Now I believe it is still sitting on my PS4, or I might have uninstalled it, but it should still be on my PS4. And eventually they released other DLC featuring other featuring other DLC characters. Or so I mentioned the core six, that being Miss Marvel, Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Thor. But there were other DLC characters. They had both Hawkeyes, that being Kate Bishop and Clint Barton. They had Black Panther. They had Spider Man, who the main thing I remember with Spider Man and like seeing the footage was, for starters, he was PlayStation exclusive, but also his movement looked very weird and nowhere near as good as the Insomniac Spider-Man, which was around the same time. Then it had Jane Foster, and then finally the Winter Soldier. Or or- and uh, and eventually the servers for the game was shut down in 2023. Essentially he ended support for the game now, and it's delisted from the storefront, so you can't even buy it. If you were curious, you'd have to get it on disc or have bought it previously, which I did. So that's why it's still on my PlayStation. But yeah, so what exactly well, I guess what went right and what went wrong with the game in retrospect. I think what went right, I mentioned I and the story, there it is again, short but somewhat enjoyable. The characters, I didn't hate the way they played. There were some cool ideas there, but um I remember not being super in love with the characters, but for a Marvel game, not entirely bad. At and the fact that they had the different DLC characters was pretty cool, I guess. But as for what I think went wrong, well, for starters, the server shut down. The gameplay, hey, like the overall structure of the gameplay, being very based on like the looter shooter genre, and kind of having the different missions, and which did feel kind of repetitive after a while. Well, really didn't help things, and it felt like there was a lot that detached people from the game. There was a lot that you really didn't want to go back for. Like the only like it like when the only time you go back to a game is for the DLC, then that's kind of a problem, at least to me. Now, there are games I haven't gone back to that I played, not out of malice or spite or me not liking the game, pretty much because I know it would be a time commitment. But then there's other games that I always find myself coming back to, I like to the point where I like a game like Spyro, where I find excuses to play it, or like Crash, or Ratchet and Clank, where you find reasons to go back to the game, and that very well could have been what this game could have been. There was a lot of interesting ideas on the table. Well, even the character selection and hey, yeah, the character selection, like the variety of characters they had, wasn't super big or super robust, but really didn't need to be, and I think the MCU influence definitely helped things along, and kind of the game being in that pocket did kind of help with the game when it came to that, in my opinion. But it feels like the aspects of it being very much online and not really having a lot to do for single players. Like if you're like for this game, if you were a single player, it wasn't super fun. I kind of compare it to like Star Wars Battlefront, which is unfortunate. And kind of how some people feel about that game, where it feels very much leaning into multiplayer, and I feel like a online I'm not against online or online multiplayer, playing online, stuff like that. That can be very, very fun. I haven't played online in a while, admittedly, but that can be very fun. But what about the people who don't want to play online? I feel like you kind of have to give the best of both worlds, when it comes to games, and that's why. And reasons like that is why a lot of people don't like live service games like this one as much. And the fact that this game ended up falling into the live service genre really didn't help matters when it came to the game. Like, if this was just a single player game, just a single player campaign, akin to something like Marvel Ultimate Alliance or something like that, I think the game would have performed much, much better. Like I said, not against online play or online multiplayer, but it feels like a lot more games nowadays, especially nowadays. And admittedly, I'm not saying anything new. I know, I'm sure I'm kind of preaching to the choir a little bit. But it feels like a lot of multi like online multiplayer games or like focus games or like live service games, stuff like that, use it as more of a crutch as opposed to an expansion. Like, yeah, you can play offline, there's plenty to do offline, but you also have the option to play online as well. Oh, and there very much should be an option. And even when the online servers are taken down, there still should be a lot to do. It shouldn't feel barren and like there's nothing to do even when the online servers come down. If that's the case, then that's not good. And unfortunately, that's where this game fell into. But it didn't have to be that way. Like, a lot of people had been wanting an Avengers game for quite some time. We had gotten several movie or slash MCU tie-in games at this point. We got the Iron Man games, we got Captain America, we had gotten Thor, we got an Incredible Hulk game. Not all of them were bad, but a lot of people had wanted an Avengers game. A lot of people would have loved to have an Avengers game, but sadly, we uh, that is not the type of Avengers game that people wanted. Is not what we got, and it especially sucks because it's from Square Enix. Like, Square Enix is usually pretty reliable for the most part. They're not perfect, but Square Enix is a pretty, for the most part, reputable name. But unfortunately, the game, focusing more on live service really didn't help things when it came to this game. And this game could have been so much more. It had so much potential, but I feel like it fails to live up to the potential. And I'll give you another example. Something they kind of got right, and maybe they learned from the mistakes. But the Guardians of the Galaxy game that came out a year later, or in 2021, which I remember the Guardians of the Galaxy game. That was like one of the first video game reviews I did on the channel. It's like one of the early video game reviews, and I kind of want to go back to watch that review just to see how far I've come. But it probably sucks. No, knowing just me and the quality of videos I was making back then versus the slightly better quality I make nowadays. But the Guardians of the Galaxy video game, yeah, that game wasn't really perfect either. But the game had a pretty good narrative, some pretty solid gameplay. A hey, and even if you were just playing a Star Lord the whole time. But they kind of had a workaround when it came to that, and it didn't and really and it didn't really have it didn't really rely too much on online. I don't even know if this game had an online mode. I'm not seeing it here in the wiki. I forgot I did have the cloud version for Switch, but which I had Guardians of the Galaxy for PS4, but um and the best part, the Guardians of the Galaxy game didn't make my PS4 sound like it was preparing for takeoff. But uh, but the Guardians of the Galaxy game, I feel like even for its faults, it's what the Avengers game could have and should have been. Just a fun single player experience, and it's with a pretty decent story. Yeah, the Guardians of the Galaxy video game story was also kind of short, but just give a pretty decent game, pretty decent story, and make it feasible to play single player, or don't fully rely on the online multiplayer or like the looter shooter aspects. Like Guardians of the Galaxy has some of it, but not a whole lot of it. And I think and it does lead me to believe that Square Enix slash Eidos Montreal. Well, and I think that was the other thing. Eidos Montreal worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, but it was Crystal Dynamics that worked and both alongside Square Enix, of course. But it was Crystal Dynamics that worked on the Avengers game. But I think if you did that for the Avengers video game, things would have turned out so much better. But I guess it goes down as a tale of what could have been. Will we get a definitive Avengers video game? Well, considering Cosmic Invasion is coming out, maybe, but I think this game will be looked on not super fondly, but it is nice to think about what could have been. And when it comes to this game, and 5 years afterwards, it was it was kind of a weird time. And really, it was kind of that weird time as well of like the pandemic. But even for the game itself, it was okay. I guess the conclusion and the moral to the story is, game was okay. Could have and should have been better, and you kind of did want better for this game. But maybe that's just me. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to do it for this discussion video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Turn on those post notifications so you know every time I upload a video, so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think I was too harsh on this game? Do you think I wasn't harsh enough? Is there any key parts I missed when it comes to this game? Is there anything further that I should talk about when it comes to this game? Let me know in the comments. And it's pretty much just let me know if I missed anything crucial when it came to this game. But in the meantime, and I guess your thoughts on the Avengers video game as well. Did you play it when it was out? If so, what are your thoughts on it? If you want to play it, I think they have disc copies available. I just want to look up and see how much it is. He is okay, so I see it for $12.99 at GameStop. That's the Avengers Blu-ray. But uh, but nevertheless, as I think that is going to do it for this video. Like I said, could have, should have been better, but sadly it wasn't, and that's very disappointing. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace.